Based on your impression of today's trophy hunter, do you think taxidermy skills are improving or are they degrading?
Don't even get me started. I'm sorry.
I think it meant degrading.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I'll try not to go off on a tangent on this one.
The key element of solid field taxidermy is time. From the moment the trigger is pulled, certain steps must be synchronized to ensure a trophy is delivered safely to your favorite wildlife artist. Here's a quick overview of the basic tools you'll need to get this far. Actually, it's just after noon, following the day of the harvest. So what we have to do now is get busy on this hide. We need to completely flesh it, and we also need to skin it off the skull and prepare this hide for trophy purposes.
By and large, the work that comes into my shop, the field prep that's been done on it before I get it, is less than optimum. And I'm being kind of polite there. I would say roughly 10% of what I get in comes in what I call really good condition. Another 10 to 20% is in quite poor condition, and then you have everything in between.
And to do that, we need certain items, certain tools to get the job done efficiently. And that includes our salt or salt substitute, a couple of straight razors, perhaps a scalpel. If you don't have a scalpel, you need a really sharp, small knife to get into those intricate details of the nose, the lips, and the eyes, which we'll show you later. And you always, if you use a small knife, need some sort of sharpener. I prefer a diamond sharpener because they're lightweight and they really put a good edge on your blade. And another good item that you'll see later in use is a pair of multi-purpose scissors, which is basically electricians use this, and they're just a multi-purpose snip. And some rubber gloves to keep all the bacteria off your hands and the blood as well. And the last item is just a small piece of wood. This is actually a piece of bark that I've shaved down to about that contour because it fits perfectly inside the ear, which is what we'll show you in a little bit when we're turning the ears inside out. All of what you just saw should have been a review of what was covered on discs 1 and 2. If none of that seemed familiar, review those discs for further instruction. But the purpose of this segment is to cover the necessary steps to get trophies the rest of the way home. Meanwhile, let's return to the kill site for a step-by-step follow-through, since all taxidermy chores begin with proper dismemberment involving the skull. You just want to remove the meat basically like you did the hide and the rest of the animal. So you've got all this tissue here. You've probably got 4 or 5 pounds worth of meat that you've got to remove to get it ready before it can be boiled. And that's what we're about to do now. Start just above the eye sockets usually. There's a nice steak in there that's right around the back of the eye. So here's the finished product after you've removed all the meat off the skull. And this is about 4 or 5 pounds worth of goodies that we pulled off of this. Pretty nice and light for sure. For a bear skull display, that's about all that's required in the field. But for antlered trophies, hunters either choose the European style or remove the bulk of the skull to shed unnecessary weight and avoid messy cleanup. Here's how we prepare a skull cap, by salvaging only enough skull to maintain the integrity of the antler base.
The caribou up here, they don't shed their velvet until the very end of August. If you shoot a caribou that has velvet on it early in August, chances are we can preserve that velvet on the bone because it's still nice and tight. But the further we get towards the end of August, the more that velvet loosens up to where that's not an option. I mean, there's nothing you can really do because that animal was getting ready to shed it anyway and it's already loose underneath.
Caribou skulls are easy to work with and much lighter than bigger game animals, like moose.
Another thing to think about is the earlier you shoot that animal in velvet, the longer it has to continue horn growth. Usually a caribou shot on the 10th of August, the upper tips will be rounded over almost like your thumb. If you wait till the middle of August, they'll get a little narrower and start narrowing down to a point. But it's sort of a fine line there in terms of time of year. If it's on there tight, like it would be in early August, all you have to do is make a couple of cuts anywhere on the antler, and you can just start peeling it apart like a banana. And you can usually just work your thumbs and your fingers in there and get all that membrane and just peel it right off. Even for people that have never done it, you're probably looking, like on a big caribou, you're looking at maybe 45 minutes to an hour max to get it off and get it off clean. And then just let the antlers dry.
You just did it, brother. Congratulations.
Those bad boys require a whole lot of effort and a great deal of patience. The angle of approach depends a great deal on the size and formation of the antler mass. The most decisive approach is a straight cut from the back, moving forward toward the eye sockets. Then at various angles, where access allows full draw with a bone saw. Then, at some point, another cut is made from the top of the skull down through the eye orbits to join the first cut. And because of the tremendously thick nature of the skull and sinus cavities, several approaches will be necessary before the antlers can be freed from the skull. Once these saw cuts are close to finished, a little leverage and a heavy stomp should get her done. The skull cap should be cleaned up to expedite the drying process, which also helps prevent blowflies and maggot hatch. Remove any remaining hide and hair from around the antler burrs, as well as any thick chunks of flesh or soft tissue that might hold moisture and also bacteria. Some bulls may have been actively engaged in rut behavior, so antlers may need to be washed clean to remove rank odors, which can easily transfer onto your game bags of meat.
Smells like pee.
Once you strip the velvet off the antlers, the bone is going to be very white at first, but then what's going to happen after time is blood is actually going to leach up through or to the outer surface of that bone. And when it does that, it's usually going to be fairly splotchy and sort of unsightly looking. Of course, what the animal does at that point, he's rubbing his antlers on various vegetation, and the reaction of the chemical of the vegetation with the blood causes the color to develop. And there's really no way you can recreate that or try to do that as a hunter in the field. So what I tell people is just dry the antlers out. You're going to have that discoloration. Let us, once we get it in our shop, stain it professionally for you, and we'll have it looking real nice.
To help reduce bacteria and expedite the drying process, we cover exposed skull caps with a thick dose of salt before wrapping the area in plastic trash bags.
Make sure when you lash your horns or your antlers to your raft, to your pack, or it goes inside that airplane, that it's not going on there in such a way where it's going to rub against metal or sharp objects in the back of your pickup truck or what have you. Baby those horns and antlers. Take care of them.
And don't forget your duct tape, it'll come in handy.
One thing that amazed me when I first got into taxidermy was that people who did put a lot of time into the care of their cape sometimes neglected to take care of their horns and antlers. And it would just amaze me. I'd get a nice set of moose antlers and all the colored areas would be rubbed or scratched and all the color taken out of them. And if you think about it, that animal worked pretty hard to get that color in there. And you want to do everything you possibly can to keep them looking nice.
The objective with this step is to seal up this area to prevent juices from leaking onto your gear or game meat. There's nothing worse than skanky blood and the like contaminating your game meat or transportation.
Whether or not a hunter chooses to remove blood stains from their hide is more or less dependent on the animal itself. If it's a hollow-haired animal, especially like a lighter animal like a Dall sheep or a caribou with a white mane, then generally you want to get the blood off of there if possible. Animals like bears, dark-haired animals like moose, it's usually not nearly as critical.
As a reminder, hides and capes belong inside quality game bags to keep them safely stowed and well protected against the elements.
When I shot the sheep, a long shot, it had quite a bit of blood in the flanks. And what I did, instead of immersing it in a creek, I took my hide and I laid it out on some brush so it was about 5-6 inches off the ground. I'm above tree line here. I laid it out across the brush, hair side up, and I let the rain fall on my hide for about 20 minutes. After that, I went out with my hand and just squeegeed, but I got almost all of the blood out. And the nice thing is, sheep hair is so dense, when I turned my hide over, that the hide side was dry. It had not gotten any wetter. So I'm not super exposing it to that one agent, that moisture that's going to cause my hide to break down.
And all trophy parts should be stowed in a well-ventilated and well-shaded area while in camp. If extreme weather conditions persist, here's a trick to consider. We submerged our meat all night after the 3.5-4 hour hike back from the kill site to our camp location. We placed all of our quarters into contractor trash bags and submerged them overnight. So we're looking at about 10 hours so far that they've been submerged. And the water temperature right now is about 42 degrees. And what we've got here, just to give you an example, we started off with a core temperature about 90 degrees. And what we've done here is we're going to test the core temperature of some of this meat just to see what our core temperature of the meat is this morning. We'll give that a couple of minutes to balance itself out. And it's still slightly dropping. So look, we're looking at a core temperature between 44 and 46 degrees. That is ideal. Bacteria, as we know, needs about 50 degrees to thrive, 50 to 55 degrees. And we are already below that. So keeping our game meat cool is one of our first rules. And we've done exactly that by leaving it in the water overnight. And regardless of weather conditions during the day, don't forget to provide adequate shelter for meat and trophy parts during the night, because Alaska's weather defines the term unpredictable. We use commercial rain flies for best results, but if you don't have that, a tarp works just as well. A growing number of hunters are traveling by river for hunting opportunities, and float hunters have the added burden of transporting meat and trophies out of the field via watercraft, and that can be a dangerous undertaking. Ideally, antlers are the last item stowed onto a watercraft, but there is no one way that works best due to the size and shape of a particular antler set, and load for that matter. However, I've learned that not all rafts and canoes provide rigging points for lashing and securing loads. Also, the type of watercraft determines safe margins for loading meat, gear, and antlers. I will say this, after a day or two of trying what works and what doesn't for your own rig, you'll be able to teach this segment with confidence. Bungees work well because they aren't permanent fixtures and can be forced undone if the situation demands. In fact, there are situations that warrant antler sets not be secured to the watercraft. For example, imagine drifting into a dangerous sweeper with an antler set heavily secured to your watercraft. If the canoe flips, you've got a heavily secured antler set upside down. Now what? In other words, experience outweighs safety in some situations, and every load is unique. We're here fishing game a couple of days after returning from the field, and it's time to seal our brown bear hides and our skulls together. They have to accompany one another to fishing game, so you'll have to bring your skull and your hide in at the same time, or else you'll pay a hefty fine. So they're going to check for evidence of sex, they're going to seal the hide, and they're also going to check the age of the bear. So let's go take a look and see what we got.
This is verbatim per Alaska Hunting Regulations number 47. Sealing requirements means having an authorized Alaska Department of Fish and Game representative place a seal on an animal hide and/or skull. Trophy parts to be sealed must be presented unfrozen and include the hide and skull of that animal, all within 30 days from the time of harvest. For more information, visit www.wildlife.alaska.gov. One of the last chores hunters must consider, especially those traveling outside of Alaska, is exporting their trophy parts. Currently, the most effective and reliable method is shipping antlers via air cargo service from populated hubs like Fairbanks or Anchorage. To date, the most economical means to ship antlers via cargo service is by nesting antlers into a single bundle if headed to the same hometown. Here's how we prepare antler bundles for such transport. First, you'll want to gather all required items to get the job done right. Any local hardware store should have the items hunters need to get this task done. Some common items include about 3 foot of 1-inch plastic tubing, 1 roll of duct tape, 1 to 2 large cardboard boxes, 1 to 2 cam straps, 1 roll of plastic wrap, 1 permanent marker, and a cutting tool or pocket knife. When nesting antler sets, start by laying down the set with the widest antler spread and nest the smaller set inside for the best fit. You might wish to place pieces of cardboard or bubble wrap between friction points to avoid abrasion scars during shipment.
Yes, we can epoxy in cracks and we can camouflage any dings like that, but you really don't want us to have to do that. It's certainly a preventable thing.
Tightly secure antler sets by way of cam straps or duct tape, as you see here. All exposed antler tips must be well protected, and we use small sections of the rubber tubing for this. It works great. Make sure each one is taped in place for added security. Once all antler tips and tines have been safely protected, wrap cardboard folds around protruding brow tine palms and those obtrusive antler tips or tines. The final step is to shrink wrap all cardboard pieces in place as best you can by using that roll of plastic that you purchased from the hardware store. Your antler sets are now ready for cargo shipment. Make sure you place your name and your phone number and address where it's headed on the outside of the box. Here's more.
We were just told by Fish and Game officials that we no longer need red export tags to make this a legal process. According to them, simply post what is on the contents or in the contents on the outside of the box. So after having done that, we're going to head over to Alaska Airlines Cargo and see if we can ship those bad boys. So that's where we're headed now, with no documents needed from Alaska Department of Fish and Game. We're here at Alaska Airlines and just paid $210 cash to send 2 sets of antlers nested together to Lansing, Michigan. The weight was about 104 pounds and they were nested well together, covered, not boxed, only put in a bag after shrink wrap, which we did at home, labeled with their name on it. No other documents were needed. So not bad, 210 bucks, it'll be there in 9 days.
You are now armed with the necessary knowledge to properly care for and export big game trophies from the state of Alaska.
Well, as a taxidermist and a hunter here in the great state of Alaska,
I'm sorry. You couldn't do that with a straight face?
no. All right, we'll work on this.
Yeah.
We hope that you'll consider paying forward such advice to friends and family who plan to hunt here.
Where I hunt is an area that's about 20-some miles.
I was going to ask you where you
Where am I?
How do you pack in enough salt for your capes on backpack hunts? It's still a very wild experience hunting in Alaska. And if sport hunters act appropriately and continue to reduce their impact on our natural resources, Alaska hunting will be around for our children's children to enjoy.
Because we don't talk about this, and this is important. Ask me about horns and antlers.
What about horns and antlers? That ain't cool. Somebody set me up.
To stay connected to our audience or to share your experiences with like minds, log on to our website at www.pristineventures.com. But for now, keep her safe and tread lightly.
Well, if you think about it, and this is the most important thing, cut.